a drummer, producer, and Tai Chi master, joins me, Bill Donnelly. What a great guy. I sat down with Bill. He came out with a new book called Inner Secrets. I'm halfway through the book right now. What a great read. But in this episode, we talk about the tie-in of the Tai Chi practice, the art of Tai Chi, and music. And in fact, Bill brought a song to the table called Great River. Not only is it a town on Long Island, but also intertwines as you listen between the words about the art of Tai Chi. So check out the song Great River and stick around for the episode as well. You won't be disappointed. I am really excited about today's episode. I have a returning guest who's written a book. Bill Donnelly has made an art of his life. He is a musician, composer, author, martial artist, entrepreneur, career expert, and teacher. Bill has been practicing Tai Chi for over 25 years. He teaches the philosophical, health, and martial elements of the art, which he studied and developed in addition to Kung Fu. I tell you, it's really amazing. I just started reading the book, and I'm going to recommend it, but we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into music. He's not only an author, he's a musician as well, and we'll cover some of that in this episode. And I want to welcome Bill Donnelly to the Long Island Sound podcast once again. Welcome, Bill. So good to see you.
It's great to see you again, Steve. I've been listening to some of your other episodes, and it's amazing what you've been able to uncover in terms of the talent here on Long Island. And the stories that everybody has been fascinating and inspirational.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that very much. I tell you, I am amazed. You know, you can read somebody's bio or meet them and not unpack all their great experiences. And sometimes just sitting down one-on-one, things come to mind. And I've heard some really left field stories that have been so charming and so insightful to life. But when I got to be frank with you, when we met, I met your brother. And, then all of a sudden, I don't know who told me that you were a Tai Chi, a Sifu. What's the?
Sifu.
Sifu.
Yeah.
Sifu, by the way, I did a little bit of my homework. That means teacher, father. And there's so many great elements. I started reading the book a few days ago, and it's an easy read. Let me tell you that. First, let me tell our audience about the book. It's called Inner Secrets, Discovering Tai Chi's Hidden Lessons for Preservation, Protection, and Peace of Mind. Now, I got to tell you something, Bill, and I'll stop talking and I'll open it up to you. But I had a real misconception about Tai Chi, and I'd like you to tell the audience what it's not.
Yeah, what it's not is it's not just something that old people do. It's not just something that you do slowly, and it's not this, freaky new age thing that people tend to think it is. And I have been mischaracterized as a kind of a new age type of person by people who have seen me perform it. I've literally practiced, in different countries and different states. So what Tai Chi is not is it's not just this thing that's practiced by old people slowly. And to be honest, Steve, that's kind of what I thought it was too. I was actually training in Kung Fu for a couple of years, and I used to walk right by the Tai Chi class and thought nothing of it. I'll take a chance. I'll do this. It'll be a warm up, and then I'll go do the real thing.
Right.
And that class kicked my ass.
Really?
Yes. And I started to realize that there was truly a lot more to it. So, Oscar Wilde said, "The art is to conceal the art," and that really describes Tai Chi, because it appears that you're really doing nothing, but when you actually start to try to learn those movements and do it correctly, you realize that there's a lot more to it. It's very subtle. It's very nuanced. And it has a profound impact on you, not only physically, but mentally as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually took some advice, and you may not have known you had given it to me. But I used to wake up in the morning, grab the cup of coffee, do all the hygiene stuff, jump in the car and run to work. And a few months ago, I stopped and said, you know what? Let me go outside. Let me take a breath, take the environment and take a breath, whether it's warm or cold, and just kind of settle myself before the day began. And I don't know if that's Tai Chi, but it's certainly put me in a different perspective, at least to start the day most days.
It's great to hear that you're doing that. Yeah, it wouldn't be considered Tai Chi, but it would be considered Qigong. And Qigong, um, Tai Chi is Qigong, but Qigong is uh, Tai Chi is Qigong, but Qigong is not Tai Chi. And
Got
so, what does that mean? Qi is intrinsic energy, so it's energy that basically exists within anything that's animated with life.
hmm
And Gong means work. So what you're doing is energy work. And so just getting out in the morning and doing some breathing. Um, I also, I do the same thing, and I start like a lunatic really early in the morning, um, partially because of my schedule, but the benefit to that is, as night becomes day, and the natural light starts to rise with the sunrise, the birds start chirping. It's a euphoric experience. Um, the book, one of the things that I think I did naturally was incorporate some of the elements of music. Just being a musician, it's something that I'm conscious and aware of. And I've taught musicians over the years.
Mm.
There's an example, and there's a small appendix that I have specifically for musicians. But in it, there's a story that I tell about somebody who was starting to train with me and wasn't practicing. So when they showed up, for their next lesson, and I said, "Have you practiced?" As well, no. And they had an ailment, a serious ailment at the time. And so I said, let me ask you a question. You're a serious musician, right? Absolutely. He said, do you ever walk on stage without tuning up your instrument? No.
Mm.
Why would I ever do that? He said, but we start our day without tuning ourselves. Why would we ever do that? So
Right.
it 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 was. I'm really happy to hear that you're doing that because I find that the days that I do that are the good days. And if I miss it, I can maybe be okay. But I certainly feel very different when I
hmm
don't start my day that way. And one of the things that comes to mind is, gee, is this how people walk around all the time? I can physically feel the difference, and it doesn't feel great to me.
Now, you know what's interesting about your book? It's not a how-to book, how to do Tai Chi. I mean, I don't even know if that's possible because there's so many lessons, and it sounds like a life journey where you're constantly putting in the application of Tai Chi. But I was like, and I was a kid in school, which when I was in trigonometry class, why am I want to always know why am I doing this? Am I ever going to use it? And I found in the preface of your book where you talk about just the challenges of living in today's world where there's so much division coming out of quarantine and all these complications. How can you take control of your life and your well-being and your health? It's got to start with you, right? But you also have to know where the goal is, where what am I going to get out of this? And and I'm glad that you explained that it's just not old people in the park moving slowly. That's more to it. But if you can do an elevator pitch of why Tai Chi, what would it be?
Um, I would why it was for me was because I found that it suited my lifestyle really well. I started training in kung fu, pretty late in life. So,
Mm.
and even the genesis of that was, a life threatening event that
Right.
we the face that opens the book. But
hmm
um, but starting at that stage of life that I was in, am I going to do the jumping, flying kicks, and all that stuff? No, probably not. And I'm not a big muscular guy, so I don't necessarily have a place of strength, right? I've never been a gym monkey.
Hmm.
That's just not who I am. And when I train, um, just lifting weights and things like that it's just not enough. And I don't judge anybody who does do that, but it's just not for me. I like to learn a skill. And I like to do things that have purpose. And so, what I found really intriguing about this was that there is nothing in the Tai Chi form that should be there. It's been basically eliminated through trial and error and challenges over hundreds and hundreds of years. So if there
Yeah,
was anything that was superfluous or ineffective, it was removed either through fights, or they just found that through the evolving science of Tai Chi that it wasn't a beneficial thing to do. So even in the opening, is not just an opening; it has purpose. I like that.
sure.
I tend to be the type of person who looks behind things for meaning in everything that I do, in the books that I read, in the music that I listen to, even looking at art, in conversations. I like to learn more than that. So for me, if you're a person that tends to like things that have depth and seems to be you know, without borders, then
Mm.
it's a great thing. I get the same thing from drumming and music, where there's always more to learn and more to do, and in doing that, I can continue to evolve as a person. So, if I were to say one thing, it would certainly be that. But also, I think that um, as we age, our bodies can only do so much. And what I've always called Tai Chi, and I still practice Kung Fu, by the way, but
Okay.
Tai Chi is the thing that I'll do until my last hours. And to use an investment term, Tai Chi is my buy and hold strategy. It's the blue chip stock for me.
Nice.
So you can do it. And um, as we age, we start to lose muscle mass, right? You
Right.
see that in older people. And you can lift weights for only so long, but that's going to go away. But the thing about Tai Chi is it trains intention. Intention doesn't diminish. And if you learn how to focus, you can focus your energy, then even as an older person with diminished muscle mass, you can still be capable of generating power.
Interesting. You know what I found interesting in looking at, so a couple things time wise, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Bill spent 25 years developing this. It's too late for me. That was in my mind. That's the negative me. It comes up every once in a while when I try to push that type of chi down. Uh, but I also saw the table that you have in the book, which really predate. It goes 1,000 years BC, and in the changes in Tai Chi and the different progression. But what fascinated me as well was, between the mysticism of the Eastern culture, because we're Western people, in Western culture. It really didn't come to the United prominence in the United States till the 1960s. When I was born. So that was kind of astonishing to me that us Westerners didn't really get a chance at it until the 60s. And it's grown from there.
Yeah, I would say that we have to remember that China was a closed society, really for quite a long time. Anybody that had immigrated here was put to work, um, and for lack of a better word, I would say slave labor, right?
I'm
The
sure.
West Coast of America, there was a large Chinese population, and most famously, Bruce Lee arrived in the late 60s, and really his whole mission was to try to break perception of the Chinaman. But um, yeah, Tai Chi was even really in closed societies in China. It was developed during a warring states period, and so we have to remember that different villages and towns um, were made up of families primarily, and they had to protect themselves. So they did not share their methods with any
Okay.
outsiders, and so there was a lot of secrecy. It really only started to come out really over the last few decades, and there's a lot of scholars that are going back and reading some ancient documents, some that were written on slabs of bamboo, and trying to really decipher some of that. And they think that there's a lot lost, but they're trying to preserve what was found.
Right. Now, what's interesting in looking at the history of it, of how it was passed down, really in a clan or a family, would be my assumption. What has changed today as far as somebody reads your book, all right? Let me just show that Inner Secrets, okay? And they learn the why, they learn your story. You know, I'm in California, I'm in Texas. What would I do to say, you know what, I'm interested in this? Where would you go? I mean, how would you find somebody that
Yes,
could be your Tai Chi person?
it's a good question. I would say that you know they can be found through traditional directories and things like that, and there are some sites. Violet Lee, who um, had written the preface for the book. I believe that at her site she's listed a lot of teachers in the different states that are there. So they are there. I think that the bigger challenge is trying to find the right teacher. Um,
Let's see.
one of the things that my Sifu had done for me probably about a year or two into my teaching. At this point I had been training with him for quite a few years, but when I started teaching Tai Chi, um, which I wasn't very good at it in the beginning. Um,
Sure.
he threw me on the floor and said, "You're going to start teaching this class now," and uh, this is Sifu Caparos and of Green Cloud, and he put me on the floor and made me start teaching. And within the first few weeks, I lost every student that was there.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I came maybe 4 weeks into an empty room, and I give him a lot of credit because when you're running a business, you don't want people walking out the door and not coming back. But
Right.
um, he just said, just keep doing it, and it rebuilt. But so for me, what I had to do for myself was learn how to teach. I had to learn more about the theory, learn more about the history, um, and really take on a more scholarly approach.
Hmm.
But there are some really good teachers out there. There's some good teachers on Long Island. There's certainly great teachers in the New York area, but there are also others that are shallow in their approach, and they don't have a lineage. They don't have an understanding, and so they do what they think is Tai Chi. But it's almost like the person who plays a musical instrument who doesn't have a lot of training and maybe only knows a couple of chords. It sounds good, but it doesn't necessarily have the depth of music. So, my brother does a lot of like these solo guitar vocal things, and he does very well at it. And, of course, he's my brother, so I'm gonna be biased, but where I think he has a distinction in that world is in the quality of his playing, because he doesn't just know the three chords for a pop song. He's played, jazz music. He's had some classical in his background, and so, if anybody's paying attention, there's more depth to that. So, those are things that I look for. And in the Tai Chi world, it's exactly the same thing. There could be a surface understanding, but if that's just it, they're not going to be an effective teacher.
You know what's fascinating about your story, and I've used this phrase before. I was a disaster before I became a master, and you literally are a master. at
Yeah.
this, and then I was reminiscing about piano lessons, and you take your child to guitar or piano lessons, and for me, it was just the one teacher, Mrs. Wallace. I still remember. I'm sure she's way gone by now, Mrs. Wallace. But I think it's interesting to take the perspective to look at finding the right teacher, the right master, to understand the student, to have that conversation, like the conversation that you had, and not just jump into a class of teaching piano and see if they take to it. I think finding that right teacher who's going to understand the nuances of a student who, like myself, who didn't have an attention span of a mature flea, but I stuck with it. It was painful though, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of key, finding the right person
Yeah.
to
I,
bring you.
I do agree. They have to have the right temperament. When I started training in this school, it wasn't just me; it was myself and my wife. And there are some kung fu teachers, karate teachers, or martial arts in general who are just they could be bullies, where they use intimidation. You know, Sifu Gus, he would just make a small adjustment. So I really admire and respect how he teaches. He's really fantastic. Um, when I was training, when I was learning Tai Chi, but I was learning Kung Fu, and they meet in the middle. Um,
Okay.
but making that connection is hard, and it took me a long time. But I would ask him a question about a Tai Chi application, and he would give me 10 answers, and about all the things that you can do. So that's what you want, right? And I eat that stuff up. So you know,
Well,
I want to learn more.
I got this question for you, Bill. We all, as I'm getting older, you'll learn about your body. It's been with you forever. Sometimes when you stress your body the wrong way, you've got a pain and you're like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Tell me how Tai Chi has helped you with one, balance in life and health, and with your own body. Because and this is totally from an amateur's perspective. You're doing a lot of moves. I mean, I was just thinking about this morning. It's like, gee, you know what? I haven't really lifted my arms up a lot, like this. And then you go, well, wait a second. I don't have that flexibility that I had when I was 50, So tell me about that.
So, I would say that in terms of what it can do for you, I think is what you're
Yeah.
asking. Um, so there's two ways of training in martial arts. What they call external and internal. Okay,
Okay.
so external. If we look at a really kind of basic example is you look at karate. Karate guys are like hiya, and it's very very muscular, right? So they
Hmm.
train for muscle. In kung fu, an external style might be the tiger style, where they use a lot in the forearms. And, it's very powerful, it's very strong. But then you have internal styles, okay? In Tai Chi, Bagua, which is a kung fu, Xingyi, which is a kung fu, are all internal styles. So what's the difference? So the external styles train the outside in, and Tai Chi trains from the inside out. So what that means is you start from a place of total relaxation, and then you only add enough tension to actually generate the movement. So
Hmm.
the first thing you learn, and the first thing you have to learn when I teach, the first thing I teach is relaxation. That's the thing that, believe it or not, the most people they don't have that inherently. We
Hmm.
actually carry around a lot of stress every day, and it is the stress that is the cause of a lot of uh, illness
Illness. Yeah. Sure.
and aging. So we want to. The first thing to do is learn how to relax the body, and then from that place of relaxation, we start to build on that with simple movements. We start to stretch. We start to figure out how to use our legs, how to move, how to balance. And then you just continue to build on this over a long, long period of time. Then you may learn the applications, which I teach, and I actually recommend that somebody, even if they don't want to learn how to fight, just learn the applications so that they understand the meaning of the movement. And then if they go beyond that, then you start to actually work on, what they call pushing hands, which is, kind of a sparring drill that, you're not going to get hit. But it does now up the level. You could go into sparring. You could go into free form sparring with Tai Chi if you want to. You can train in weapons. So what happens is that in all of these, you start to, start from a place of relaxation and meditation, and then over time, you're upping your level of physical engagement. And then if you train in the martial element, you're actually increasing the level of pressure that you have to work under. But you're learning how to work under pressure from a place of calm. So in terms of balance, you are achieving balance both in a physical state.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at it, we could get into, yin yang, which is corresponding opposites. It's
Right.
encoded into the form of multiple levels. And I've been doing some book speaking engagements, book signings. And one of the things I do is show one example from the form that, anybody can learn. It's easy enough to do. But we look at how many corresponding opposites are encoded into this one thing. And the levels are, it's upwards. I mean, the simple example is probably upwards of, 10 different representations of yin yang in one form. So, so you're balancing corresponding opposites, even in your breathing. We breathe in, we have to breathe out, right? If we take a right step, we have to take a left step. So we're always in a place where we need to balance. And so what happens is that in training this form, you learn how to balance within yourself. You learn how to balance physically. You learn how to balance mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. And then from that place, you learn how to balance with the outer world and everything that's going on there. And it helps you maintain your composure with everything that's going on.
Interesting. We have a lot of music lovers obviously listening to the Long Island Sound. Bill, let's do this. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I'd love you to talk about how Tai Chi has influenced your music and vice versa. And then, get into like the daily life stuff. You're in finance and all these other things, how it's played a role and how it affected your life. So, everybody, stick around with us. We're with Bill Donnelly, and the book, before I forget, is called Inner Secrets: Discovering Tai Chi's Hidden Lessons for Preservation, Protection, and what I need a lot, and I think you do, is peace of mind. We'll be right back with Bill.
Are you ready for the ultimate podcasting adventure? The Long Island Sound podcast offers you not one, but 2 ways to engage with our captivating content. Tune in to our audio podcast on your favorite platform and let your imagination paint vivid pictures of Long Island stories. Or if you're craving a visual feast, catch our video podcast on Spotify and on the Long Island Sound YouTube channel. Double the options, double the excitement.
Hey everybody, we're back with Bill Donnelly, and this is Steve Yusko, your not so humble host from the Long Island Sound. And we're talking about Bill's book called Inner Secrets about Tai Chi. Bill, I got to ask you this. How long in the making was this book?
Well, it took me 5 years to write, but it was because I was trying to do this while also,
doing everything else,
and having a family life and, working and doing all these other things. So it did take time, and this is the first book I've ever written, so I was really learning by doing, and
Right.
and that took some time as well. But I didn't have a short horizon either, so the Christmas holidays and summers, I would take off and just kind of put it down a little bit. And, I was actually glad that I took that time, because it really allowed me to think more about what I was doing, to really
Mm.
try to distill the message. And again, over time, over the last 5 years, a lot has happened in the world. So, um, it was things that I could take into consideration while I was putting this together.
The one thing I want to touch on for the audience who's just meeting you, Bill, for the first time, Bill has been a prior guest here on the Long Island Sound. He's a drummer, percussionist, producer. He has this project that he's put together year after year. I think it's year after year, called Albums We Love, where he sits down with his compatriots and they pick out an album they love and they play it from cover to cover. And he's got some fine musicians, including Brother Dan in there, and Stephen Lucas, is it?
So, yeah,
Uh,
Joe Lucas.
and I saw a couple of the albums you did. You did Eric Clapton's Slow Hand, and we saw you at the Oakdale Yacht Club, and it was really great. It was really a great project, and I applaud you for it, because I can't wait to find out what you're going to do next with that. So I just want to give a little teaser to the audience. If you want to learn more about Bill, as far as the other dimension of Bill in music, look up that episode on the Long Island Sound. But before the break, Bill, I want to understand how practicing the art of Tai Chi affected music and vice versa, and life in general, in what you do in your day job, so to speak. How's it changed what you do, I guess?
Well, I wanted to actually study martial arts before I became a musician. When I
Okay.
was a kid, when the other kids were watching Batman, I used to watch the Green Hornet for that 10 seconds that Bruce Lee would explode on stage, right? And he would save the Green Hornet. And I was just fascinated by that. But there were no kung fu schools around. And so, and I didn't want to do karate or judo. It just wasn't my interest. So
Okay.
it was going to be kung fu or nothing. And so it was nothing for a long time. I started to then practice drums. As it turns out, my first serious drum teacher also had a background in martial arts, but we didn't really move down that path very much. But there are certain things that I think that he brought to those lessons that I could see as correlations. When I trained for a long time in drumming, and I've studied with some great guys who I think we really talked about in the last episode. So we won't get into that. But what I found, that there were a few things that I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn what the benefits are. First, there was just the physical benefit of it, right? Playing drums is a very physical instrument, and so we want to really be in the best condition we can be in order to play well, if nothing else. I also noticed that we were talking about relaxation before, and what I noticed was that just the way my hands would move, where I would just relax and I would let the weight of the hand come down, as opposed to trying to
Drive it down.
or drive it down. So
Yeah.
it was starting to change my physical approach. My breathing changed, and over time, I've been working to better understand how music and martial arts come together,
Mhm.
and they do, and a lot of it is in movement, which life is creation and movement, right? So we're everything is always moving, and what I've learned from Tai Chi is to have that movement, to have agility in thinking, to always be, unfettered in the approach. Um, in some of the Zen books, they talk about if you ever see like like some of the old Indian goddesses, and they've got 1,000 hands, and they all have all these different objects, and I would look at it and never really knew what it meant. So what they're saying is that because the mind is moving, it can hold all of these objects, but as soon as the mind rests on one object, the other 999 objects are going to fall, because the mind is not, moving in a way that's going to keep all of this going. So you learn how to do that in martial arts, but you really also learn how to do it as a musician. We just don't really put that together. So they're feeding on each other, and I think that the quality of one will enhance the other. As a musician, I find that if I'm kind of in a pure mental and physical state, where I feel good and I feel clean and open, I'm more creative. I feel that the music has better flow. As a drummer, I feel like I'm playing more naturally. I practice and teach Tai Chi with rhythm, everywhere from a metronome to actual music. And as drummers, and which is probably the best example, but really all musicians, even guitar players, if they're strumming, there's an area, there's space that's being traveled by their hands, the strum, or piano player, as they're resting their hands. Drummers are raising and lowering the stick, but it's only about a foot, right? About 12 inches. So you can monitor that space and the time that your body is moving through that space. But if you're working a Tai Chi form with a metronome marking of 30, which is agonizingly slow for musicians, it's actually kind of fast for Tai Chi. And now I'm not just moving my hand or my arm by 12 inches. Now I've got to move it across this wider span of space, and I've got to measure between the beats, how am I going to get there? And so it really forces me to concentrate. What I find is that by doing that, I'm now training my whole body to move in time.
Oh, interesting.
And I started to really then look into, drummers, in the old days, like in the 20s and 30s and 40s, most of the drummers, most musicians, actors, they didn't just play their instruments, they danced also. So Buddy Rich was a dancer, but even more modern players, Steve Gadd, the famous studio drummer, was a tap dancer. Omar Hakim, who a lot of people know, loves to dance. Questlove, when he was going to school, had to learn how to dance. Steve Ferroni. So there were a lot of really great drummers who have this natural sense of time and this great sense of groove. And it turns out that they were also dancers. So I would not consider myself a dancer at all, except at weddings. And, and I've never trained in classical, although I'm going to learn tango. But
Nice.
So Tai Chi to me was the easiest way to kind of get the same benefits without learning the foxtrot.
Nice. I want to talk about, you brought up about relaxation and balance. I certainly see that. I'm always intrigued when I watch musicians on stage, how they communicate with each other. You're communicating through rhythm, keep people in time. There's the ebb and flow of parts of people who fill in, the ebb and flow of silence, or like the tide going out. I find that so interesting, but I want to tie it to something that I experience even in public speaking when it comes to being in tune with yourself and being relaxed, I found that, and this I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, feel free, is as we practice things, as I'm practice my speaking on this podcast or public speaking, over time in repetition, I become more relaxed and transparent, and I could personally emote and be myself, and it becomes enjoyable. Where public speaking can be one of the most frightening things for people. I look forward to it. It doesn't mean I don't not get nervous at certain times, but as I'm getting older through repetition, I'm fine. You know what? I am a little bit more relaxed at this, and I will flub, but then I'll bounce back at it. So I just find the balance aspect and the relaxation such an important part of the why of Tai Chi.
Yeah, it is. And I would say that if you're, generally a relaxed person, you can put other people at ease as well. And I think certainly if you're a speaker, that's important to be able to do. Certainly as a musician, for me as a drummer, the first thing I need to do is make the others feel comfortable, especially the singers, because they're the
Right.
ones that really are communicating a lot. And if they don't feel like you have their back, it's going to be hard for them to commit to doing what they're doing. So I think that having a relaxed approach is just better all around. I haven't seen too many things get solved by people that are overly tense at all, really.
Yeah, come to think of it. I got another question for you. These things kind of pop into my head, so I'm sorry. They kind of come. The concept of Qi, from what I understand, it has to do with energy in many different things: the earth, the water, the flame, what have you. Do you control your own Qi?
So yes,
And I don't even know if is that an appropriate
yeah.
question. I don't know. Okay.
No, it is. It's a great question, and the answer is yes, and that's really what Tai Chi training is about. So it's really interesting that you kind of put these two things together, because we're talking about relaxation and then Qi, right? So you want to be relaxed, but how do you be relaxed and still be energetic?
Right.
And see, that was the thing. Like when I took that first class, so I talked about like the physical workout, but the example I give is that think about those days when you wake up, you get out of bed, and you just feel good, right? You feel good when you get out of bed, and you're going through the day, and you're just sort of saying the right thing to the right person, and you're just connecting here, and everything you're thinking is just very lucid, and the day just flows, and you're like, man, it was a great day. I used to have those about once a year. I would have those, right?
I miss those days.
I would have it, once a year. But I started to find that when I was training in Tai Chi, I was starting to have those a lot more often, and I like those days. So Qi. So yes. So acupuncture is a good probably visual example for a lot of people about that's what they're doing. They're manipulating Qi because the needles are metal. Metal's a conductor, right? So every cell of blood has an electrical charge, and using that conductor, they're pooling the energy into the areas that they're looking to heal. So it can be done. And so what we are doing is there's a lot to it. So I'm going to try to just encapsulate it as best I can. But basically, what happens is that when you're training in Tai Chi, what we're doing is by relaxing, we're actually kind of letting everything set and sink. Your midsection below your belly button, there's a makeup of muscle, fat, and water. That's actually the ideal environment to store energy. So what happens is that in your center, which now they're discovering and studying more, it has a what they're calling a second brain, which is not conscious thought, but it functions like the brain would. It's holding this energy. Now, if I'm going to reach for, say, a glass of water, right, I'm thinking about that extension. So if you're doing that, you have to direct the energy up through your arm, your hand, and your fingers to actually get that get that function to happen. So we do it already. What we're doing through Tai Chi is we're really learning how to concentrate that more. So you start to learn how to do things. Like when I work with older people, maybe they have to, push through a heavy door, and they struggle sometimes because it's there's a lot of resistance in those doors. But if you think about it the right way, and you learn how to drive your energy a certain way, then what's happening is you're focusing your intention, you're focusing that energy, and it's not disparate. It's not all over the place. It's very very focused rather, and that is where you start to generate power.
Interesting. I was thinking about Tai Chi and where I think as a novice I can get confused by thinking it's some sort of new age mystical approach to things, which it's not. But what I was thinking about, and as you're explaining the art to me, is this can fit into so many different lifestyles and improve your golf game. I don't play golf. Okay. But it's not, I don't find it objectionable to my Christian beliefs by any means. In fact, I see parallels through prayer and centering and taking that time to retreat, once a year to collect your mind, which you can do on a daily basis, but people don't allow themselves often. I'm sure people practice your art, do that very mindfully. But I can see where this interwoves through many lifestyles, male or female or what have you. But I have another question for you that just popped into my mind. It happens. Can you be too young to start Tai Chi? Like, can a 5-year-old do Tai Chi?
No, actually, in China, they train young kids, and actually a friend of mine who's lives here now, but she was in Hong Kong when she went to school. She trained as a young person, and my daughter, when she was young, I would sort of train her. I would do it in ways of games, and you get to remember that 1100 years ago, people mostly were illiterate, so they used mnemonics, right, to teach. So they say, oh, we're moving like a cloud, and they do those things. Well, that's a great image for a kid, and you can actually just create little stories using the images to get them to move and just keep it fun and playful. It's absolutely a thing. And you bring up an interesting thing about it's spiritual without being dogmatic or religious. And
Good
you're
point.
right.
Good words.
It's the thing is, and again, this is one of the things that really fascinated me about it, and I had zero awareness of it at the time, but Tai Chi is based on three things. It's based on it's a system of health. It's a philosophy, and it's a fighting art. The philosophy is Taoism. Taoism is simply the study of nature, and all of the premise is based on just the natural phenomena that exists around us. So that's as non-religious as you can be. It's also the most accessible thing.
Right.
Qigong is the science of religion, science of nature rather, and so they inform Tai Chi, which basically is based on the premise of nature. I like that because I'm not a theologist, but I have read about different religions. I've read different philosophy books like the Stoics and things like that. What I find is that all of those ancient arcane texts really are all pointing to a lot of basic truths, but they're just doing it in a different way. They're all related.
Right, right. It's just as you were mentioning that, I was thinking of the famous friar Thomas Merton, who was a monk in I think Kentucky, who is he's got an interesting Seven Story Mountain is a great book to read, but he was investigating um, Eastern philosophies, unfortunately before his untimely death. So I could definitely see the parallels of different practices to kind of open you up to these things because as a Christian, uh, very rarely do we talk about the body of taking care of our health through dogma or lessons or stuff. Maybe it bleeds in, but this is just my experience. It's not been a very purposeful thing to say, "Hey, take care of this the shell you've been given," because we're all interwired here, and you can't you can focus on the mind, but you can't ignore the body. With everything, and that's what's interesting about the balance of the art. Let me ask you this, Bill: how's before getting into Tai Chi, the Bill before Tai Chi, and the Bill in the midst of Tai Chi? How has it changed you? And how
Well,
has it changed your relationships? How's that?
yeah, it's changed. Studying kung fu, studying tai chi has changed me a lot. As did music, which
Mm,
I probably studied for about 15 or 17 years before that. But my teenage life into my early 20s were not easy. A
mm,
lot of things happened that weren't good and that
okay.
were beyond my control. Um, and I, you know, I just find that we all go through these trials, some more than others, and you can choose the way you respond. I notice that some people they can be bulldozed over by life events, which
Sure.
I talk about in the book, by the way, and I think is worth noting that because it's important. Um, but I chose to get beyond that. I wanted to change my circumstances, but the driver for that was mostly anger. And so I was a person that carried a lot of frustration with me. I was quick to lash out. I have a black belt in sarcasm. And I've tried to pull that
I knew
back.
I knew you had that skill.
Yeah. Yes.
I think I got a double black belt in that.
Yeah. It's and that's sort of the sarcasm is probably uh, you know the last remnants of that person. But
Okay.
it wasn't easy, and I don't think I was always easy to be around. So
Mm,
it did change me a lot. Emotionally, I balanced out a lot. I really
great.
started to develop a perspective of the world. You know, and again, that's one of the things that is covered in the book. I talk about emotional balance because I thought that was something that really was very helpful for me that I arrived at,
Hmm.
and also talk about virtue, inner strength, and there's you can look at your life circumstances differently with training. Maybe that's the thing, Steve, that I could tell you has been the most important thing for me is that
Mm,
um, we are all subjected to the ups and downs of life. And, you can watch, if you watch the news, every night or something like that, it can really, really do you in. There's a
right. Sure.
lot
Put you in a
going on.
dark place. Yep.
Yeah. And it's something that I've been talking about quite a lot lately is that we have, accelerating technology. We have rampant media. We have the cost of healthcare. We have an increase in violence. We have a dramatic economic shifts. We have environmental problems. problems. We have increased violence. We have, we have wars. We have all this stuff going on. How do you deal with all of that? So if it's constantly coming at us, and we don't have a place to go to, then we can get caught. You almost get like getting caught in the waves, in the ocean,
Right.
and you kind of,
In a riptide.
Right, and it knocks you around. So what I propose is a practice, a daily practice that can get you to a place where you have what I call allows you to be a sovereign participant in life.
Okay.
And
Nice.
what does that mean? Sovereign is self-governance, right? I want to make my own decisions. I want to have my own place. I want to live to my own values. Even if the laws change, I can still live to my own values. I can still
Keep them intact. Yeah.
pursue my ideals. But sovereignty in the extreme can be isolation. So we don't want that, right? But then people, if we're participating in the world, which we must, because we can't be hermits, we have to live a realistic life. But at the same time, we don't want to get trapped into groupthink. We're just following trends. We're just being, subjected to whatever is handed to us. So, I had said sovereign balance one time, and I started getting a lot of responses to it because I think it actually resonates.
Nice.
I want to self-govern as I participate in the world. So I can do the things that a lot of other people do. I just want to do it my way.
Right. Hey, let's do this, Bill. Let's take a quick break. And I'd like to expand upon, you talk about a mantra. And as I was reading it, I think I had already developed a mantra. So I'm going to ask you when we come back to validate or say I'm way off. But let's just take a quick break, and we'll be back with Bill Donnelly talking about inner secrets of Tai Chi. Very interesting stuff. We'll be right back, everybody.
The Long Island Sound is here to help you connect with local artists. Follow us on Instagram for the latest up-to-date podcast episodes and also to connect with your local artists and their upcoming shows.
Everybody, we're back with Bill Donnelly, and we're talking about Tai Chi. And I tell you, my mind has been opened to what Tai Chi is, what it's not, how it can be so helpful to our lives. And this book that Bill has written really tells us the why of Tai Chi. And I think once you read it, as I'm reading it now, it's going to spark your curiosity about an art that can help you in mind, body, and soul. So before we went to the break, before I forget, our audience heard Great River, which happens to be a town here on Long Island as well, that Bill had recorded for us. So Bill, tell me about Great River.
So Great River started, by passing the town of Great River by train. And every time I would pass that sign, I could hear the phrase musically. And
Okay.
so and had it tucked away for, a really long time. I didn't do anything with it, but I was like, that's a song, it's a song title there. So I did. What I wanted to do with it was use, Great River metaphorically, right? Which is like the flow of life. So a lot of what is in that song is really, there's a narrative progression almost through time where, the narrator is looking for the answers of life. And I've drawn on, various influences, both musical and through literature. The one line, if God's truth is life. Well, the Irish poet Patrick Kavanagh stated, God's truth is life. And so I sort of questioned it. I said, okay, well, if God's truth is life, then let me hear that lesson. What is it that we're trying? So it's really about trying to understand what one's life could be, and that it's not always perfect. but you have to continue your journey.
Yep. And it's how you I mean, I heard this, it reminded me this past weekend. Stephen Cobert was being interviewed by the gentleman from CNN, who escapes me at the moment. And Stephen Colbert had an incident where his father and brother died in a horrific car accident. And he said, everything's a gift. Anderson Cooper was the interview. Got choked up during the interview. And he said, really? Do you really believe that? And he said, yeah, I believe it. I said, I accept life. So I have to accept that life comes with suffering. It's just, that's the reality of it. And he was trying to grapple with that. And I'm paraphrasing here, he said, through everyone's different suffering, as we hopefully get through it and have things to help us get through it, he goes, the gift or the blessing of that was the empathy that was born in him for other people who have gone through similar things. So it's just an interesting perspective. But now learning about Tai Chi and an art that can help me balance my life and pull things together is very hopeful to me. And I haven't finished the book. I'm going to continue reading it because I get it has that thread of hope through it to kind of kindle in people's chi to find that energy. And no matter how old you are till your dying day.
Yeah.
Before the break, I read in your book about developing your own mantra. And then, of course, I think about myself because of my favorite subject. And one of the taglines, and I don't even know, I probably stole parts of it, but nothing's too original, where my mantra, at least in the podcast, and maybe it should be for life, is be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on the journey. And I thought it was just like more of a marketing thing. But as I read about a mantra, maybe there's some lessons in there for me. So maybe you want to talk to us about developing a mantra.
Yeah. And I think for you, it's not a marketing thing because it's really coming from a genuine place. For me, I annotate all the books I read, and I'm always using that to learn. So for me, the next step was, how do I bridge that? How do I actualize these things? And so in Inner Secrets, very, very early on, I kind of walked the reader through the process so that you can extract words and you can play with the arrangement so that you come up with something that's memorable to you, and it can be your own thing. And through the years, through the ups and downs of my life, I've kind of created these little phrases that represent certain things and certain ideas. So when I had met a Buddhist monk, and we were talking, and I had learned some Buddhist chants, but one of the things I had said to him was, they're your words and I don't understand them. So if I don't understand them, then I'm really just making a sound, which on a physical level can be beneficial, which is a whole other thing. But the meaning of those words didn't hold for me. But then I shared a mantra that I had created, which I think that one was moving through life with awareness of the time I have living as an artist of life. And so actually it was flowing through changes with awareness of the time I have living as an artist of life. That was the mantra. And so, awareness of the time I have, right, is pretty explanatory, and flowing through changes because we're all dealing with turmoil at some level, but we're all creative beings and we can create our lives. And so it was just a simple way. One of the things that I've come out with recently that I'm writing in a lot of the books that I've been signing is embrace the unknown, flow with change. This is the lesson of Tai Chi. And, one of the things that I've learned and realized is that what creates a lot of stress and anxiety with people is fear of the unknown. It's stepping out, and that it's not easy for a lot of people to do. And again, looking at the headlines, everybody says, "Where is this all going?" We don't know. So learning how to really deal with the unknown is probably one of the greatest lessons all of us can learn. And if we start to master that, we don't want to be a victim of change. We want to be a master of change. And the only way you become a master of change is by training yourself to deal with it. And so I think artists are probably, more predisposed to doing things like that, as opposed to people that might live other ways of life. Surfers tend to be really good at change. They have to,
Right.
to ride the waves. They have
To adapt.
learn how to adapt. And
Yeah.
so I find, like, if I do Tai Chi with a surfer, that they get pretty quick.
You know what's interesting, and you brought it up, about being present. That's been on my mind. And then, the lesson I take from a mantra is I need to remind myself about certain things. How to not overreact, how not to let someone's anger, drive me crazy. There's no other way to put it. How to manage that, and there's choices that we can make. But I think at least the lesson I'm hearing in a mantra is these reminders in a subtle phrase that's true to yourself, that helps your being. I'm a pretty upbeat guy most of the time, not all the time, confession. I love doing this podcast. You know why? I get to be present with Bill right now for the time that we get to spend together. And I can look back in the past 20 years and ask myself, how many meaningful hour-filled conversations have you had with the people you love that you've known for 20 years? Sometimes I'm a little sad about it. And there are certain friends I have that we can go deep, and other friends, not so deep, but that's okay too. It's just, a choice, so just really some great lessons.
Of our lives too.
What's that again, Bill?
Having friends with different levels of depth or interest is part of the fabric of our
Right.
lives, right? They can't all be the same, and we don't want them. It's like, I look at it as, they bring out different parts of us, and it's like facets of a diamond. You look at it different ways.
Good point.
Still,
So let's talk about, where can people get Inner Secrets, Bill?
So Inner Secrets you can order at any local bookstore. Which, if you have a local bookstore, then I would ask you to start there. But in the absence of that, the book is available through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble. It's being distributed in 39 countries, so it should be easy to find.
Wow.
So it's available and accessible.
Yeah, and we'll have links to find out more information about Bill, about Tai Chi. You do lessons still and speaking engagements. You've recently done a book signing. I'm sure you're going to have more of that coming up. So we'll have Bill's website. You'll also find information on gigdestiny.com. And right in the description of the podcast that you're listening to or watching now, please pick up the book. I can only attest, I'm just about a third of the way through, and this is going to be my weekend read for sure. So I'm really looking forward to it. Bill, I really want to thank you for your time. I know we changed things up here on the Long Island Sound, but hey, you never know it's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get here. And we're here to explore life and how to improve ourselves and live in harmony with each other and with nature. So thanks for being here, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
All right. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.